Please be seated. The court is now back in session. I hand over to the prosecution to continue his line of questioning. You may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Witness, we were discussing the moment, the time you spent at Bung Trabek, and you said that you had arrived in November 1976 or around then. And did you see there people who had traveled with you in the plane in which you traveled to Phnom Penh? You spoke about former servicemen who were coming back from the United States. Did you see such people in Bung Trabek? Or did you see them again, rather?
But
Response: No, I didn't.
And at Bung Trabek back then, were there former diplomats?
At Bung Trabek back then, there were no diplomats returning from overseas.
Do you know Bung Trabek's code name or the code name it had in 1976 and in 1977?
At the time, I did not know, and later on I was told of the name of that place, but I cannot recall.
What were your tasks? What was your daily work that you were obliged to perform at Bung Trabek? And why did you say earlier on that the living and working conditions were so difficult there?
The class struggle the class struggle sentiment that I had when I stayed in Ta Khmer, it accelerated, and it was the sentiment that I had.
Could you specify what you mean by this feeling of class struggle? How would this show itself concretely speaking, in particular within the camp?
The struggle gained momentum, and at the time they told us that it was in line with the party's line, and we had to uncover the enemy within ourselves. So it was in Bung Trabek camp that we started to think of it. When we were in Bung Trabek, we knew that there were coconut trees and coconut fruits over there which were ripe, and some of them fell down, but we were not allowed to pick them up and eat those coconut, because they told us that that was not in line with the principle of liberalism defined by the party. So the struggle that gained momentum over there led to the arrest of people who simply pick up the fruits to eat, and they also called them to a meeting or a rally in order to refashion them concerning the class struggle. So in the rallies, they would arrest the people who had arbitrarily picked up fruits or so, and then others would criticize those individuals. That was called the class struggle wrath.
As far as you know, during your first stay at Bang Trabek, how was the camp organized? Were there different units? And what was the hierarchical structure in this camp?
In reality, the hierarchical structure over there was divided into different groups, and the assignment and designation was the same as the camp we left from. They appointed the team leaders and deputy team leaders also. So all of the intellectuals who returned from overseas were designated to supervise different teams, and they had to report to Angka and upper authority. And individuals who had the responsibility for each team had to report to them. So those who were responsible for each team had to regularly report to the person in charge. In other words, the team leader had to try to please their superior or people in the upper authority, and consequently it created the atmosphere of mistrust among friends and colleagues over there, and that was the atmosphere over there. But what I can emphasize was that the situation or the atmosphere over there was much more tensed compared to that in K15.
Who were the Khmer Rouge cadres running the Bang Trabek camp? Can you provide us with names, the names of these cadres, and maybe can you provide us with the names of some of the intellectuals they may have relied upon to run the camp?
I can recall one of them by the name of Savon. I cannot recall any other cadres unless I have the book with me. And my friends from overseas was Tri Meng Huot. He was the PhD holder in chemistry. And Tôi Phia, he used to study in Peking. He was educated in France, but then he continued in Peking to get his medical degree.
Did you know back then who was Sovan's superior?
I only heard they mentioned Angka, but I had no idea what Angka was and who Angka was.
And during your first stay at Bông Trabec, were people brought away outside of the camp? And did this happen often?
Yes, they brought them away often, but I cannot recall the names of those who were taken away, but I could say that it was very often. It was the last camp we were sent to before we dispatched to the Graham. They took away some of the people over there, but I can recall only some of them. One of whom was Rum Sarun, who was my in-law, Mr. Pung Ton Chuk Mau, and others whom I cannot recall from the top of my head.
And they were taken away under which circumstances? Were they told where they were going?
To my knowledge, there was no information whatsoever concerning the transfer out of those people. As for my relative, my brother Ruh Saran, I thought that he was transferred to somewhere else because he was the former director of the Po Chin Tong International Airport, and we at that time thought that he would be transferred to another post because of his previous work background.
And at Bông Trabec back then, was there anyone by the name of Kun David? Does that ring a bell?
Kun David was one of my friends, but I cannot recall the event very clearly. I have no idea whether or not he was taken away from Bang Trabai camp or from the K-15. But what I learned later on was that his name was in the list at S-21.
And what about Mr. Kre Lin? Did you ever see him in one of these sites or camps? Krin Lin.
Mr. Krin Lien, when I was in Bang Trabai camp, I saw him the last. And to my recollection, at that time, PUM convened a general meeting somewhere in the printing house near Bang Trabai. And following the general meeting, he was taken away. And PUM came along with other two officers, and he they took him away, and I met him for the first and also the last time on that day.
And why did Pum convene a meeting? You said earlier on that Sovan was the person who ran Bong Trabek. So why did Pum convene a meeting when you were at Bong Trabek?
I did not understand that either, but Pum was the one who was in charge of supervising us at K15. I have no idea why he convened the meeting then, but to my recollection at that time, Pum during the meeting said that the internal struggle of the party, he himself was terrified. We recall of the event during the Hitler regime when people had to kill each other at the time.
Thank you. You said then that you traveled to the Red Earth, Dai Kraham. Can you tell us how long you spent there and where Dai Kraham is located in Cambodia?
We left for Dai Kraham in late 1976. It was in December 1976. And I stayed there until two or 3 months prior to the fall of the Democratic Cambodia regime. I cannot recall the exact date.
So, if I understood properly, you were there from December 1976 until 2 to 3 months before the fall of the regime. Can you tell us why you went to Dai Kraham? And what did they make you do, or what were you obliged to do once you were there?
When I got to Bang Trabait, I stayed there for a short period of time, and then they asked us to prepare our biography, and we have to have our name in the list of people to be sent to the Dai Kraham. And when they asked us to list our names or register our names, I did not know the reason why I was asked to do that, but they told us that they wanted volunteers, and they also convinced us that at Dai Kraham there were plenty of crops and fruits over there. There were potatoes and cassavas and other crops in Dai Kraham. So they appealed to us to volunteer, and my brother Ruh Saran was the first one who volunteered to register, and he asked me to also register my name in the list as well. And I was very cautious at that time, and if they told us with all the good stories as such, probably there might have been something behind that agenda. I maintain that suspicion in my mind. But eventually I registered my names together with others as well in that list to be transferred to Dai Kraham.
And before we speak about your activities then, can you tell us first where Dai Kraham was located, in which region of Cambodia?
We left at night, and those who were familiar with the geographical location told me that it was somewhere in Stung Trong. When we got to Dei Krahom, we had to drive across a rubber plantation, and then the next morning we found ourselves arriving at office 7 or office 17, and then we met with the person by the name of Kan and others who came to receive us. They told us that they had known many senior leaders like Ho Yun and minister of previous regimes or so who resided over there. So I got to that location, and there were B20 and B17 over there. There were office for cadres, and there was another office by the code name of B18. The location was actually in the forest. It was further beyond the rubber plantation, but I did not have any idea of the exact geographical location. I cannot respond to your question more precisely than this.
So, very briefly speaking, what did your work entail over there?
Our first job was to clear the bushes and in order to plant potatoes.
And can you tell us what the discipline was like over there, and if people disappeared from Dei Krahom?
In Dei Krahom, in general, the living condition was a little better because we had access to potatoes and other crops as well, and we could roam around the area, and we had access to waters and streams, things like that. So the living condition overall was better than that in Bang Trabai camp. And as for the Khmer Rouge cadres and officers over there were more polite and treated us more friendly over there. And it was the first times that we received that kinds of hospitality or the decent treatment there. But on the first day of our arrival in Dei Krahom, they took away some of the people over there. And one incident which I can still recall was the two nephew and nieces of Ieng Sari or Ieng Tirit away. They took them out, and then Hom Sukung was also taken away, but he was taken separately. So in only 1 week, they took away 3 people out of Dei Krahom. And Sukung was the former engineer when he was in France. He was in the international building, and he at that time met me and said goodbye to me when they took them away. And then after that, they took away other peoples as well. But each time they took away the people, they asked us to prepare food with chickens or so that we can send them away. We offer the good food to them with chickens and things like that for them to send them away. That was the a symbol of good gesture. So, and to my recollection, there were approximately up to 100 people or so who took away during the entire period of my stay over there. I did not know where they took those people to.
Do you know if Ying Tirit and Ying Sari's niece was among the 100 people who disappeared, or were they found later on?
When we left Day Krahom, we came to work in Tours Line office. We found some names of the Cambodian returnee from overseas, but I did not find the names of those people who were sent out of Day Krahom. I was wondering as well as to where they were taken to. We knew that they had disappeared, but later on we found out that only two of them survived, the nieces of Madame Ying Tirit, who have survived to date, and the rest were dead.
So back then you did not know, is that correct? At the end of your stay at Day Krahom, were you told that you had finally been re-educated? After those long months, was your level of re-education assessed, or did you have to continue with your re-education?
Let me clarify this a bit. When we learned about the disappearance of people from Day Krahom, in 1979, when I was transferred to work in office S21, there was a former medical doctor who used to work with the Khmer Rouge. He told us that my friends and associates had already been executed in Prey Kong forest. I did not believe him, but actually Prey Kong was some 30 minutes drive away from Day Krahom. And I wonder why they killed those people, and I could hardly believe it. And then in 2000, I went with Hungry Locas and another photographer and my kids as well to go there again. And then I asked the resident over there, and they also told us that Prey Kong was the place notorious for the execution of the Cambodian people. They show some of the items, but I did not know the the truth of that, and I did not even know the exact location where the people were executed. But of those who disappeared out of the Daker home were all dead, with the exception of two nieces of Ieng Sari. But until today, I did not know where they were taken to or where they were executed. And you may ask the second part of your question. I cannot quite catch your second part of the question.
I wanted to know if at the end of your stay in Daekrahom, your work in Daekrahom, rather, the Khmer Rouge cadres felt that you were re-educated, or rather that you needed to be moved elsewhere to continue being re-educated.
As far as I know, at that time, they said Angkar needed Jew brothers, so you had to return to Phnom Penh. That's how we were told. That is the remainder of us anyway, and we were tracked back to Phnom Penh. So I couldn't link that to whether we actually concluded the study session or the re-education.
And what happened in Phnom Penh? Where did they take you?
When we arrived in Phnom Penh, after we disembarked from the boat near the garden opposite the royal palace, we were taken to a house where the Korean and the Japanese engineers stayed previously. It was located near Wat Phnom, and it was a chief who took us there. Chief was the association of Ieng Sari, and he told us that Ieng Sari instructed him to take us to rest in that location near Wat Phnom, and it was late evening by then.
Did you stay there until the time when the Vietnamese arrived, or was that a temporary stay and you continued elsewhere?
We stayed there only for one night. However, during that night, Ieng Sari came to meet us, but I was asleep at that time, and he met other people who later told me that Ieng Sari came to meet us. He asked where we had been during the past few years, and who actually sent us to Daekrahom, and how the situation was like back in Daekrahom. Actually, it was a kind of a chit-chat with some of us. It was like brother to brother chatting.
Merci. Thank you. After that night, where were you sent?
After that night, we were sent to Bang Trok Bai. First, we were asked to stay at B30, and there were B30, B32, and B31 sections within that Bang Trok Bai compound.
Did these appellations exist before, or were they new? Who was working in these three different sections, B30, B31 and B32 at the time?
The organization was a bit different from the time that I stayed there earlier. That is before our going to Dai Krahom. As I knew, we were told that our group was under the supervision of Ieng Sari.
Et vous
And did they put you in B30, 31 or 32? And with what category of people were you put?
I was put in B30 for a while, and then I was moved to B32, staying together with the former diplomats. At that time, I was told that while I was at Dai Krahom, I had re-educated myself, so I was moved to be with the diplomat group. At B30, sometimes people were moved to B31, and then they would be taken to work at B4. It means that they had not yet re-educated themselves.
And what about the Khmer Rouge cadres who were running Bong Trabek? Were they in B30, B31 or B32?
At that time, I cannot recall whether there were any other Khmer Rouge cadres besides Ieng Sari and his associates. Occasionally, he would bring fish and other food to us. So he actually provided us with sufficient food, and the work there was much less intensive. And the younger youth whose diplomats' parents had been killed were prepared to engage in study so that they could be later used to receive the foreign guests coming to visit Cambodia. So the situation at that time seems to change. We were not forced to work as hard as we were, although we still engaged in labor, but it was much less intensive.
When you came back to Bong Trabek, Sovan, who was in charge of Bong Trabek before, was he still there?
I heard people talking about him that Savon had been arrested by Angka when I arrived. It means Angka took him away. That's how it was put.
Did you attend meetings with Ieng Sari when you were in Bong Trabek?
I attended a meeting twice.
Commençons par la première.
All right, let's start with the first. Where did it take place? And about how long after you arrived in Bang Trabek was it held?
It was in one room in Bang Trabek, and it was a one-day meeting, but I cannot recall the exact time of the day, but it was a one-day meeting.
Et qui à l'époque
And who was at that meeting? Was it all the people working in B30, B31 and B32?
The first meeting, as I recall, was a common meeting for all people from B30, 31 and 32 in order to hear his presentation. And that was also the first time, that is prior to my move to B32, that I saw former diplomats whom I knew earlier, including Sarin Chat, James Ngoon, Hao Nam Hong, etc. I met them in that meeting.
et Yang Sari
Yang Sari made a presentation. Can you remember what particular subject he talked about?
The subject that I called in that first meeting regarding the current situation in Cambodia, and that we had a strenuous resistance against Vietnam. I remember that subject clearly, and he said that please feel at ease that we will definitely win.
Did the question of security come up? Was there any talk of traitors?
He spoke about the traitors, but I cannot recall exactly whether he spoke about that in the first or the second meeting. He talked about security, about the arrest, and at that time he spoke about Toti Pia. Before I went to Dai Krahom, this person was a member of the Bang Trabek committee, and one Pini, whom I had known for a long time since I was in Paris. He was implicated in true documents. And he said in order to accuse somebody, there should be at least 3 implicated documents. But at that time, I knew nothing about the implicated documents. He also said that he would defend our comrades from overseas, because he said he did not believe all of us would be traitors. And as always, he would defend our group coming from overseas. He said he used the word as always. That's how I remember it.
if I understood your last sentence, he said that all of the intellectuals coming from abroad were not systematically traitors. Is that what I heard?
No.
Ieng Sary did say so. He said that he always told them, it means other people, that not everyone that from overseas was a traitor.
Concernant Van Pini,
What about Van Pini? You said that he had been incriminated in several documents. Did Ieng Sary say if this person had been arrested?
At that time when I was in the meeting, and at that time I did not know of the existence of S21, so I did not really understand what it meant by that. I only knew Van Pini had been incriminated in 2 documents. I did not know what the documents were or what that meaning, what that statement meant.
est-ce que Ieng Sary a parlé?
Did Ieng Sary talk about any accusations against Van Pini, saying what he was accused of, or did he not?
As I recall, Ieng Sary only said that there were 2 documents incriminating him, but I cannot recall any other statements. As for To Ti Phiet, he said To Ti Phiet was a member of the Kuomintang.
When you went from Bang Trebek to Terre Rouge, did you ever hear Ieng Sary at the different meetings talking about Sauvan and what happened to Sauvan?
As I recall, Ieng Sary said Savon was a traitor.
Did he say what sort of traitor he was?
At that time, I did not want to know further, and I did not know that if a person was accused of being a traitor, that person would be taken and killed. I could not grasp the situation, and I didn't know about the killing.
At these meetings, did you hear Ieng Sary talking about Lin Serivutre, for example?
I am not sure whether I heard it from friends or from other people. I heard that Lin Serivutre was joined the CIA network. But to me, it seems rather exaggerating. But I heard about their accusation back then, but I could not say who actually told me about that. Liang Sarivut was accused of being a CIA agent, and Liang Sarivut was actually a cousin of Suong Sikun. But I could not fully grasp the situation back then. Before I went to S21, I could not grasp a lot of things or a lot of situations. I could never imagine that they were taken and killed.
Thank you. Yes, I was indeed asking you to distinguish between what you heard Yang Sari say and what you saw subsequently. One last point concerning the subject of Vietnam. Can you remember what Yang Sari said at that meeting or at the subsequent meeting on that subject?
Nothing else to add, as I understood at that time that we had to engage in intensive battle with Vietnam. But I could not add anything else, as that's all what I can recall.
Durant cette période,
And during that period, up to the time when you had to leave Phnom Penh, did you continue working in Bong Travik?
In the evening of the 6th January, or was it the morning? I cannot recall it clearly. So Hong came to tell us to prepare ourselves to leave Bang Trabai. First, he said that the men will go first for a temporary period. So we prepare ourselves for the departure, and on the night of the 6th, we came to the railway station, but there was no train, so we returned to Bang Trabai. And in the morning of the 7th, all of us came on the left. That is the men and the wives and the family members. And we were taken to the Thai-Cambodian border. That's how I was told. But along the way, I heard the explosions back in Phnom Penh. Then the train stopped on its track. We waited and waited. But in the end, the train did not go any further. So we were instructed to walk on foot and to live in the cooperatives. So we were dispersed into various cooperatives. It was near the railway track in Romihai, but I cannot recall the name of the location exactly.
Thank you. One last question, Mr. Witness. When you left Phnom Penh by train and you went through these cooperatives, Was Ieng Sari with you, or had he already left Phnom Penh?
No, there was no responsible Khmer rules with us. There were only us. I mean, the Cambodians from overseas. There was no Angkar representative or someone in charge of us. So we split ourselves into smaller groups and went to live in various cooperatives, just try to survive.
Merci infiniment.
I'm very grateful to you, witness, for having answered all of my questions. Mr. President, that brings me to a close, and I shall therefore pass the floor on to the civil parties for tomorrow morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prosecutor. Thank you, Mr. Witness. The time is now appropriate for today's adjournment. The court will adjourn and will resume tomorrow morning. That is the 9th of August 2012, starting from 9 a.m. And we will continue to hear the testimony of Ong Thong Heung, who will be questioned by the lead co-lawyers for civil parties in the morning session, and then by the defense team, first by Nuon Chia's defense. Mr. Ong Thong Heung, the hearing of your testimony has not yet concluded, and you are invited to return tomorrow for your testimony. Court officer, could you assist in cooperation with the visual unit for the return of the witness and have him returned tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Security guards, you are instructed to take the 3 accused back to the detention facility and have them return to the courtroom tomorrow morning prior to 9 a.m. The court is now adjourned.